All right, welcome back, everyone. So, in our last episode, we were able to register user with all their credentials and successfully sign them in or log them in. So, as you can see, we have our first user with this account number. As you can see, this is our Firebase. So, let's take a look. So, these are all the informations we collected from the user, and let's sign user in using this number. Let me just copy this and then move to our login screen and then paste this, and then the password. I know I did 1234 1234, I think. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so we were able to sign user up. So in this episode, we're gonna create the dashboard. This is the Figma design. So we're gonna be creating this in this. I'm gonna be creating the home or the dashboard screen in this episode. So, but before we do that, there are a few cool refactoring that we're gonna do. So, for instance, we need to change the login screen. The first thing, you shouldn't be phone number, as you saw previously when you tried to log in. It shouldn't be phone number, but the placeholder should be account number instead. It should be account number. Okay. And also we need to refactor our onboarding screen. As you can see right here inside our index, we have our onboarding screen inside our main index.jsx, and we have the onboarding view. So I want us to move this into its own component rather than just being here, because in the future we're going to have some other code inside this index.jss. So we don't want to cluster. We don't want to have unnecessary code that we can actually refactor into a folder or its own component there. So let's come down to this component and then create a JSS file called, let's call it onboarding view.jsx. So we just have to call it onboarding view.jsx, and inside it, let me run my code snippet, and I think so. Let's have all our imports. In fact, let's import all the 3 onboarding screens from the index. So you have to go up, import everything here, the 3 onboarding screens, just cut them and paste them inside here. First of all, we need to also import our normal React animatable. Let's check that as well. Okay, cut this also and paste here. Okay, so now let's start making use of it. First of all, we need to destructure the active item that will be passing there, and in our return statement, we're going to have the animatable. Okay, so we're going to have the animatable.view, and inside of it, let's pass a few props there. So we have the key, just like everything we have in the previous screen. We have the key, which is equal to active item, and the animation, which is equal to slide in right, and then duration should be 500, and the style, our style should be flex of 1. Okay, so inside of it, we're going to have our screen. Instead of the animation, we're going to have our screens, which takes the active item. So let's create this screen above. So just before the return statement, let's call our const screens. Okay, which is an array of the onboarding screen. So we have the onboarding 1. Let me just copy it, and then okay, onboarding 1. Let's duplicate this and then call this one onboarding 2 and this onboarding 3. We have to separate them with comma. Okay, all right, so now we need to properly import this. As you can see, we are having an error, so I think this should be dot slash. I think Okay, it's not it. Let me try it again. It's inside onboarding screen, so it should be slash. Okay, dot slash dot slash dot slash. This should be app, I think. Okay, so I should be inside app, and the app we have onboarding screen, and the onboarding screen we have onboarding one. So I think this is how the format should be. So let me just do the app slash dot app slash. Okay, so dot app slash. Okay, so now we are properly importing everything. So I think this is how it should look. Remember, we're also exporting it. So back inside our index.js, we can now safely remove it from here. We can now delete it from here. Okay, so as you can see, our index.js looks and now let's import it anyway. So it has to be onboarding view, and we are importing it from components slash onboarding view. So you can see this is where we imported it. Okay, so I think that should do. And also in our registration screen, we should make the phone input also should be QWERTY and no longer just a number, a numeric input. So I think this is where we have the phone number. Let me just remove the keyboard type entirely, so the user can properly just type in the correct format, because I observed that some phones with a numeric keypad, they don't have access to the plus symbol, so they cannot put plus whatever area code that they want to impute there. So I think that is that. All right, so I think we have to save everything and then kickstart. So before we start building our home screen or our dashboard, we need to first of all create a folder inside of the app and let's call it tab. Small letter, I think. Let's use a proper conversion and call it tab. Okay, and then as usual, we will have to have our layout.jsx inside of it and still run our code snippet. Okay, so we're gonna call it tab layout. I think, yeah, it should be tab layout. Okay, tab layout. Okay, so let's just call it tab layout. All right. Okay, so in our return statement is where we are going to pass in. Let's first of all import all the stuff that we're going to be using here. So first of all, we need to import. Let's import our icons from --/constant/constant. I think. Okay, so that's place. All right, we need to also import what we call home icon. I think we have home icon, which is not inside of our, it's actually inside of our icons, so I think we don't really need to import it here. Okay, so that is that. Now let's try and create this layout tab. This layout tab is actually going to be this tab below here. We have home, budget, investment, and profile. So we're going to be starting with the home first of all. So let's head back. As you can see, our code loaded in our emulator, and we went back to. Okay, so as you can see, this means that our code is still working and our account number has been changed here. Our phone number has been changed to account number, so everything is working normal. So now inside this tab layout, we need to first import tabs, which is coming from Expo router. Remember, tab is coming from Expo router. We need to also import the necessary stuff, such as we need to import our ReactNative components, such as image, text, and views. Also, let's leave that aside. And inside the tab, in fact, let's put this inside the fragment. Okay, now inside this tab is actually a self-closing tag. It's a self-closing tag, so let's just make it tab and then delete this. And inside of it, okay, no, it's not a self-closing tab. inside of it we're gonna have few other props. Okay, so the first props we should be having there is called screen options, and the screen options has few components like tab active tint color, which is the color we want to have. Remember, we have the colors defined here when the user clicks it, and when they are in active state, and when they are not in an active state. So that is what we are trying to define here inside the tab. And then this is the color we have here should be 00 EB97 00 EB97. Okay, so that's the first color. Now we put comma. The second one is tab bar inactive tint. Tab bar inactive tint color. So this should also be CD E O. Okay, then put comma. So the next one should be tab bar show label. So we don't want to show any label. Let's make it false. So we'll not have the navigation label there. So no label for now. And that's, so we also have our tab bar style, which takes an object, and then we have the background color, which is FFF, and we have the border. We have the border top width. Okay, so this is 0. Now we're going to see how this looks after everything. Let's just, we have another border top color, which is CDEO. Has to be inside of quotation. Okay, so, and lastly we have the height, which is let's make it 64 pixel. All right, so this is everything we have inside of our tab props, and below it we're going to have our tab screen. Remember, after this, let me just put it like that. So we're going to have our tab screen. So let's call it tabs.screen, and I think this is the one that is the self-closing tag, so self-closing component, whatever you call it. Okay, so inside of this, let's go down a little bit. We're gonna have, I'll remove this for now. Okay, so inside of it we're gonna have home. I don't know if you guys are seeing properly. So we're gonna have name, which is equal to, let's call this home, and then we have options. Then the options takes in title, which is home, title home, and comma. Then we have header shown. Header shown should be false, and also we have our tab bar icon. So we're gonna be using color. We're gonna define these tab bar icons later on, so let's just create it, color, and then focus. We're gonna create this later on, and okay, so below it we're gonna have our tab bar icon, which is just tab icon, and and it's also a self-closing tag. So we're gonna create this. Let's just add it. So the first one, it takes in icons. Which has home icon, and then color, which is color, and name, which is home, and lastly focused. It takes in focused. So let's create this tab icons above. So before our tab layout, we just have to create this here. So let's say const tab icons, which is equal to, and then we have to destructure the props, which is icons, comma color, comma name, comma and focused. Okay. Let's write this properly. All right. So inside of it, we're gonna have a return statement there. So inside the return statement, we're gonna have our view. And then we can give it a class name of flex, item center, justify center, and gap of 2. All right. So inside it, we're gonna have an image. Which holds our icon, and then our source has to be icon that will pass in as a prop here. So it's this should be icon and not icons. Okay. Now the size mode should be contain, and tint color should also be color, and class name, we should have width of 6 and height of 6. So that is that. And below the image, we should also have our text, and inside the text we should have class name, which is so this class name, I think we need to put it inside curly braces and then use our backtick for conditional statements. So let's run our conditional statement based on whether we have an active state, so that we can focus on it or not. So the first thing we have to do is call our focus. So our focus, if our focus is true, then we change the font, please semi-bold, oh, okay, else okay, no, it shouldn't be inside here, so it should be inside of the focus. So if focus is true, we should have font, which is p semi-bold, this one, and else we should have font.p regular, and if not so, we should just have our text as Excel, our default text as small, and inside of it we should also have another style, and this style takes in the color prop, which is the additional code that we're going to pass to it. And inside of this text, we just have the name, which we are also passing. And I think that is that. Okay, so the home icon we need to import, and I think it's coming from icons.home. Okay, so we have it there, icons.home. Okay, So I think everything is working fine. Tab bar icon, focus, yeah. All right, so I think we have to duplicate this. So let's duplicate this a few more times. Second one should be budget, and let's just replace everything here. So we have budget, and then the icon should also be budget. I think it should be chat pie. Now let's also copy again and duplicate. You have to do this. You have to do this 2 more times. Okay, the other one is investment. Let's also copy investment, and the last one should be profile. So profile. Then let's change this to profile, and also the investment, let's change it to investment. All right, so let's save. Okay, so I think that's that. So the next thing we have to do now is to create these tabs inside of our tab folder. So let's first of all head over here and then do home.gss, save. Another one we do, first add this. Okay, second one we do budget.jsx, save also. And the other one is in investment.gsx, we also save. The other one, the last one is I think profile.gsx. Okay, so now let's run all our clip code snippets for them all. So we have the home, so here should be view, and then there should be text, then call it home. Let's import all these. Okay, now let's copy everything here and do the same thing for our budget, and then call this budget, and also budget, and also budget. Okay, let's save. Same in our investment, let's call it investment, and also save. So the last one is profile. Let's do the same. Profile, let's save. So I think we have all our 4 tabs, and also we need to change this. Instead of tab, let's refactor the folder name. It shouldn't be just tab, it should be tabs. So let's refactor that, and then so I think that's that. Now let's save our code and check it out. So let's try and log in again. We need to fix this login as soon as possible. I don't like the fact that we are always logging in to preview our changes. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Okay, so let's log in. Okay, all right, so as you can see, we have our tab, we have the home, budget, investment, profile. For some reason, as you can see, as I'm clicking it, it's changing. If I click on profile, it's changing to profile. If I click on home, and they're all changing like that. So I think for some reason our icon is not showing, so let's fix that. I think I know where the problem is coming from. The problem is that we call this icon and we call the other one icon, so let's just leave it as icon because we already have icons for the other one. So I think this should be icon, so let's remove all of them. It should be icon and not icons. So let's save and see. Okay, the icon is not still showing. I think we'll have to restart our emulator once more. Okay, before we do that, let's head down to our main layout. Remember our main layout, which has this code. So let's just change this to tabs, and then header shown false, and then click save. Okay, so I think we need to restart we need to reload our emulator to see the changes that we have here. So let's just do R, then reload the emulator. If it doesn't work, we just have to terminate. We just have to terminate it. Okay, I think it's not working, so we'll have to terminate it and then just restart everything. So after reloading my emulator, this is what I have. Remember, you will have to terminate the emulator first of all by using Control C, and then you will run your npx expo stats code. So this will enable you to have all the changes that we've made. All right, so as you can see, we have our home here. If I click the budget, we also have the budgets. So let's place them inside the save area view. So let's first of all head back to our home, and I think we need to have the save area view, which comes from, okay, that's auto imported for us. So let's save that, I think, and now we should have the home in the save area position. All right, so we have it here, but I think before we continue, we need to look for a way to persist our login so that we won't have to be logging in each time we want to check our code. So we need to look for a way, and one of the ways that we are going to use is to have a state management. And like I mentioned in some of our previous videos, that we'll be using Zustand as our state management. We might also, for whatever reason, add context API with it, the React context API state management, but we need to be able to handle state in this level that we are now. And also you can see that each time we loaded the app, we always visited with the onboarding screen. I also do not want that. I want us to, once we load the app the first time, okay, we can always see the onboarding screen, and if we have to open the app again, we need to remove the onboarding screen because it's no longer the first time that we are opening the app. So the onboarding screen has to show only when the user is opening the app for the first time, but after that they shouldn't be able to see that again. They should always move directly to their login screen. So we are all going to manage that with state management, and handle that from our Firebase also. So let's try and create that, and then we'll continue. All right, so we need to start from somewhere, and but before we do that, please, I want us to change just one thing. Head back to our tab layout, and in our tab layout we should change this semi-bold to just p-bold. To just change it like that, so that the text below, the text on our tabs will be bold instead of semi-bold. I think I prefer it like this. So if you have made that change, let's move on with our state management. Like I mentioned before, we'll be using Zustand, and then to get started, all you have to do is do npm install Zustand. So this is the way this is the code you have to run to install Zustand. I've already installed this, so I think if you're running the code from our boilerplate or from the one you copied from, the one you cloned from our repository in our GitHub, you will have it. You have the Zustand here. As you can see, we have Zustand. Okay, I don't think we have Zustand. Okay, we don't have it here. So that means installing it for the first time. Okay, so we have to wait for it to install. But as it's installing, let's continue. We need to create a folder. Not a folder anyway, inside our let's just create a folder called context. So let's just call it context, and inside that context we're gonna have what is called, let's call it GlobalState or GlobalStore. Let's call it GlobalStore.jsx. okay, so this is where we are going to handle our store, or we are going to handle our state, especially for the users authentication and the users data. So we'll be handling it here. So the first thing we need to do is to import the necessary stuff that we are going to be using, the necessary libraries and functions that we are going to be using here. So let's first of all install that as we are installing our Zustand. So let's first of all, we need to import something from our Firebase. So we need to import Firebase/Firestore. So what are we installing from there? We are installing doc, we are importing doc, and on snapshot. Okay, this is number one. So number two, we are also importing okay, DB. It has to be DB and auth. which we are also importing from our / utility / Firebase Store. And the next one should be import async storage. Remember, this is the one we imported. That's auto imported for us. This async storage that stores our data locally. Remember it, we had it here. Let's see, we imported it when we created our Firebase config. As you can see, we have it here. So this is exactly what we are importing, because we're going to be making use of it inside this GlobalStore. And then the last one is create, which we are importing from Zustand itself. Excuse me. All right, so I think since we are not having any squiggly, we have installed the library correctly, so we have Zustand and it has installed. So now let's continue. All right, so the first thing we need to create is our export. We need to export const use global, let's just call it use GlobalStore. Use GlobalStore equals to create, and in this create we have our set, which we pass to. All right, so here is where we're going to manage our state. All right, so the first hook, before I move on, let me just explain a little bit about this thing, or let me just write the code and then I'll explain later. So we need to have our first hook or variable is logged. So let's set it to false. We'll be making use of this false, if I can type that. The second one is user, which is the auth user. So let's just name it like that, and then initially it will be new. So the other one is user data, which we save inside our Firestore, and also new by default. So now we have our loading. We're making use of this loading when we are opening the app the first time, so we have to set it initially to true. All right, so the second one we can have maybe for this user we're going to be making use of it. Let's just have our set function. Remember how we have in if we are using, for instance, let me just write the code here. If we are using use state hook that we normally use, and then we call it we say it's use the, let me just say for instance, and then we have here user, and then we have set user. So this is exactly what we are doing here using Zustand state management, but it has other procedures to this. So this is exactly what we are doing, so but in another way. But I will explain to you guys how this works eventually. So let's first of all set our user. So right now our user should be user, which we have created, user, which is set, and inside of it we are calling the user. So now if we want to use this set user, it's very, very simple right now. So for instance, we want to make use of this set user so that we can now have our user globally and can make use of this user anywhere in our app. So let's head down to our login. So here is our login. So when a user logs in the first time, as you can see, we are not storing their information anywhere. So this is the code that runs when the user, let me minimize this. So this is the code that runs when the user tries to sign in into our app. The try statements, we set the loading to true, we query the app, and the rest of it we check for the snapshots, check if the number exists, get their email and sign them in with their email according to the number that we got, and if they are actually verified, and then we can log them in to the home screen, which is the dashboard. So we are just logging this, result out, as you can see, and this is what we get back from the sign in with email and password. So we get back this result, which is actually the user's credential. As you can see, when we sign in the first time, you will see that we have all this. So this is the result that we get from the user whenever they sign in. As you can see, it contains their identification information, it has their email, their display name, the tokens, so many other things that we're going to be making use of here. So but what we are interested in, how to save this in our app so that we can always be remembered. We can always persist our login without having to go through all the onboarding screens and logging in and signing up again. So we have to persist that. So whenever we close this app and open it again, it takes us directly to our home screen instead of asking us to sign in again or showing us the onboarding screen. So right now, like I said, we have created this global state here using Zustand, and we need to set it. So we need to import this and then we need to import this and then make use of it. So how are we going to do that? Let's head back here inside our login. Let's call the set user. Let's call the set user, which is coming from use GlobalStore, and so that's automatically been imported for us. As you can see, here is the import. So now we can now make use of this. You see how simple it is to have a global variable or global hook here with Zustand, unlike the state or the context API that we get from React, which definitely means that we have to enclose our app, or maybe for instance inside this layout, the app layout, we will have to enclose this with the state area context API so that we'll be able to make use of the state inside here. But with Zustand, you don't need all those things. All you have to do is just import it as you import every other component you use inside your app, and then you set it or make use of it. So remember, this is now our set user, so we need to set this user. So let's copy this. Okay, so down to where we need to get the result. Remember, this is the result. So instead of console logging this out, you just have to say set user. You just have to say set user result dot user. Okay, so now we are going to get back whatever. In fact, let's call this credentials. Let's, instead of calling it results, so that you don't get confused, let's call it credential. Okay, so the credential is what we are passing here. All right, so now whenever we log user in, we will get back their credentials, and these credentials has automatically been saved inside of the global state called user. So if we console log user, we'll be able to see the user's credentials. But let's move forward. Let's move forward again. Now inside our login screen, we need one more library, which is our state. This is our what is it called? The async storage. The async storage that we imported here also, we need to import that too from inside our login. So let's just copy it and then head back to our login screen. Let me just close all this to avoid distraction. Let me just close all this. We're gonna only open those ones that we are making use of. So let me close everything apart from the ones that we are making use of right now, okay, which is this global state and login. Okay, so like I said, let's import it here. Okay, now we have the async storage. So this async storage, we need to save it locally. Remember, we need to save it locally. So whenever a user signs up, we store their data or their credentials locally in our phone, so that they won't have to. This will only be cleared when the user signs out, or maybe they wipe in their data or cache of the app, or maybe they do a factory reset or some kind of way, or maybe they reinstall the app. That is the only way this will disappear. So, but as long as they continue using this app, or they have it installed on their phone, this is how it's going to be. You understand? So they will all have their data persisting inside their phone, so they won't have to always log in all the time. So how are we going to do that? Let's head down here and then write our wait, and then we call the async. So we call the async, and then we set item. So async.set item, and it has 3 parameters. So the first one is the name we want to use to remember this all the time. So the first thing is the variable. We need to always know what we are calling. So the first thing that we are calling here is the user auth. Okay, so we are trying to save the user auth. So this is just like a reference to the documents and where they are stored. So we always be using user auth to reference these documents each time they are being saved. Okay, so the next one is JSON. We need to pass JSON.stringify. So because we are passing an object, so we need to convert it one way or the other. Remember, so you cannot save an object inside your phone. You need to convert it to a string, and then we'll be able to get it. Okay, so it's called credential.user. So now we have saved, whenever a user logs in, we have saved their information inside our phone locally, and then we are still able to set it globally here inside our global state. You understand? Okay, so this will come in handy very, very, very much, because whenever a user opens this app, we have to check if they are logged in first. So if they are logged in first, then we'll have to get all their credentials. As you can see, we are not fetching their data anywhere here, so we are going to use their authentication information to fetch their data inside our global state. So that's exactly what we are doing right now. All right, so let's continue. After this, first of all, we call this let's call load storage or load user. Let's just call it load user from storage. So this is actually an async function. And okay, so here we're gonna write code. Let's add comma here. So we're gonna have code that we always fetch our user each time they run the app. So how are we gonna do it? Let's come down and write our try catch block first of all, because we'll be trying some things, and in case they fail, we'll have a way to handle that error. Okay, try catch. Okay, so inside our try block, let me make space here a little bit. So inside our try block, we have, let's have const stored user auth. Let's call it stored user auth, and it's equal to await, and then the async, the one that we imported above, as you can see here. So the async storage dot get. So now we are getting the user. Remember, we use the set here. Right here we are using set item, or right here we are using the get item, because now we want to get whatever that is being stored using the keyword or the variable we use to reference that. So as you can see right here, we called it user auth. So we need to check for this user auth, and if there's anything inside the user auth, that is actually what we want to get. You understand? Okay, so now if eventually there is something in the stored auth, so if there is something inside there, it means that we have it. So we need to pass it, pass user, if I can type properly to the type user auth. Okay, JSON dot pass. We need to convert this back and then get it. Okay, it's called store user auth. Okay, so now we are getting this, and then we need to set it. Okay, we need to set it with the set function from Zustand. Okay, so we are setting this, and we destructure it, which is the user that we have created here, and it's an object, and then we are passing it to the pass auth, and then we are passing is the logged in or logged. So this, if it is logged, we are also passing it to true. All right, so now we are setting, if we have a user, we need to set them with this pass auth or pass user auth. Sorry. Okay, so if we don't, so we need to just return function. So let's return this auth, return auth, which we get from Firebase, our database, and then this is on auth change, and we have it as async, and then we are calling the current user. Okay, we are calling the current user. I think we are typing this correctly. Okay, yeah, we are calling the OnState Change. So this OnState Change is actually a method we use to always listen to our Firebase auth and know when a user is signed in or out, and then perform an action accordingly. I don't know whether you understand me. This OnState Change is like a listener to our Firebase auth. So it will be listening to our Firebase auth all the time and waiting for any kind of change so that they can automatically update us in real time within our app. All right, I will explain further. Let's continue writing our code. So we have here, if current user is active, so if it is true, we need to now fetch the user doc ref. Let's call it user doc ref, and then we call it from the doc, which takes in our DB, and then our database name is users, and we have current user.uid. Okay, so let me explain. If eventually we have a user which we have gotten from our stored user auth, so now we need to fetch their corresponding data from their Firebase store. Remember this properly. We need to fetch the user's data as long as we have a logged in user from their database using the current user.uid, which is their UID. Remember, the UID of a user is the same thing with the UID of their Firestore. The user, let me explain. The UID from this UID here, this UID that we are seeing, this is the ID that we are using to reference a particular user. So it is the same UID with the one we have in our auth. So if I click auth, okay, so take a look at this UID here. This is the UID. Let me close this a bit. So this is the UID here. As you can see, this 5G5 something whatever string that we have there, you can come back here and see that we have exactly the same thing inside our Firestore. So this links this together. So Firestore database link the user authentication with that UID. Okay, so if you understand that, that is actually what we are referencing, because if we can get the user's ID, we can get every other information about that user in our Firestore. That's exactly what this is doing here. All right, okay, so let's continue. So then we need to return on snapshot. On snapshot, we takes in our user doc ref. We takes in our user doc. Let me just copy it here. User doc ref, and also takes in our doc, and then we're trying to check if the document exists also, because we need to have all these checks so that we don't reference a user who is not available, or maybe a user that has been deleted. Okay, so if the document.exists, so it means that we have the user. Okay, so we run our set, which is a from our Zustand, then we pass in the user data we created above. So we pass it to the doc.data that we are getting from the Firestore, doc.data. Okay, and then we have our command, then we set is logged to also true. Okay, so if we have it, we are setting it. So right now, our variable called user data, which we're going to be making use of, will now have the information of that logged in user right here. So if or else if we don't find any user, we just have to set this to null. So we just have to set user data to null, so we don't have any kind of error. All right, so now after this, we need to set the loading. Remember, set the loading to false. Okay, all right, so in case of everything, we need to set the loading to false. So here is actually where we are doing our cleanup on mount. Okay, so remember, this if is where we are checking the user. So else we need to set, is logged. We need to set everything right now to false, I guess. Okay, so we call this is logged to false, comma user to null. We need to set them back to their default state. User data to also null, and then we need to also empty await async. We need to also empty the local storage, or the local information they have inside your phone. .remove, we're using the remove method here, and then we reference the user auth. Okay, so right now, in case all this, okay, let's also set the loading to false also. So loading to false. Okay, so in case this code did not run, in case the if did not run, the else should set back everything to null. You understand? Set them back to their default states as we have them here. That's exactly what we are doing. Okay, so right now, let's continue going inside our catch block. I think we are done with this. So inside our catch block, let's just find a way to get whatever error. So let's do console.log the error, or console.error. Let me just say console.error, and then just write error loading user data. and then we call in the error. Okay, all right. So also we set the loading to false again. We set the loading to false. All right, so I think here we have it. I can go through it once more, as you can see. So now we have this function or method here, which is load user from storage. So now we need to always run this. As you can see, we haven't used it anywhere, so we need to make use of it. You understand? In one way or the other, we have to make use of this, and which is we have to run it every time the user loads the app. So we will need to run this inside of our layout. Remember the layout from our app, our main layout, the one that has that is beneath, or that is above the index. So remember this layout where we have all our app. So this is where we have all our corresponding stack and screens. So if we were using the context API from React, we would have to enclose this with it, something like for instance, we'll enclose it with the context API, whatever that we called it. Let me say, for instance, we'll enclose it with something like this, because I need you guys to understand what we're doing here. Let me just cut this and paste here. So if we were using React Context API and then we use it to create a kind of state management, we will have to enclose this. So because this is actually the root of our app. So this layout has every screen. Remember, it has the index, the onboarding, and inside the onboarding screen we have about 3 onboardings. We have also auth screen, which is a folder, and it has every of our auth screen. And then the same thing goes for the tab. So we have more, and we are going to be adding more screens too. So which means this context API, whatever that we are going to be importing, or the states, whatever state that we want to manage or use, will be available to us inside all these screens or JSS that we have created. So that's actually how we would have done it using the context API. But right now we are using Zustand, so we need to find a way to always run this app, and the best place to always run it is inside this layout. So how are we going to do it? Let's undo everything here. Just wanted to explain to you guys how we would have done it using state. Okay, so we need to import the use global store first of all. All right, so we need to import it, the use global store. Let me check for where we, okay, so just like we imported it from here, use global store. Okay, let's see. So all we have to do now is just copy it. So let me just copy this import here. Okay, so let's import it inside our layout, and I think I'm getting, okay, it should be just one. Okay, all right, now we need to make use of this use global state or use global store somewhere here. So let's just call it const, which is equal to use global store, and what we need to get from it is this load user from storage. You understand? So that is what we are making use of inside of it. So now we need to pass this inside use effect that always runs whenever the app loads, and the best place to do that is inside here. So we are calling this load user from storage here. So whenever the app mounts, we need to check for all the stuff that we have written here. As you can see now, we are making use of the app. It has grayed out. Okay. So as you can see, whenever we run our app for the first time, we are checking for all these stuff that we have written here. All right, so now we need to also check if we are getting the proper information back from the user. So how are we going to do this? Let's head over to our home screen, which is our tab. Let's head down to our home screen. So now we need to make use of some of these informations or some of this hook or informations that we have passed here. We need to make use of them. So let's say, for instance, I want to make use of the user data and the user itself. So let's head down to our home, and then inside here we need to also import, oh my god, I cannot type today, import use global store, and then we need to make use of it here. You can see how seamless it is to make use of this. So we are making use of the user. In fact, let me equal to use global store. Okay, so we need to get the user, we need to also get the user data. Okay, so we are getting this from our use global store, and now if a user is logged in, let's get their information. Okay, so first of all we need to get the user.email. So the email that they used to log in. Remember, this is coming from the authentication side. Now let's try the one that is coming from the Firebase store side. Okay, so we call this user data dot let's say for instance first name. Okay, and then we need to put this chaining method here so that we don't get any error in case the user is not, in case we are unable to fetch the data immediately, the login, so that we don't have a null error. I'm also going to show you guys what will happen if we don't have this chaining method here. Okay, so now let's save our app. Let's save everything and see. Okay, so I think we have an error. It's saying here email of null. Okay, that's good. So we'll find out what is wrong with that and how we can fix that. Say email of null. All right, so let me just save everything and then restart our app. I don't think we have any issue. We just have to, restart the app, and the best way to do it is just to click R and then reload everything. Sometimes you will have to terminate it and then start everything afresh, but let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. Okay, I just wanted to see if we can get the user. Right now, the reason why we are still getting this is because we have not really written the code that will navigate us to any kind of screen based on whether we are first time opener of the app or we are not. But I just wanted to test out if we are having the right information about the user before we head down to that one. So let me just log in again. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. So let me just log in again. Okay, as you can see, we are getting the right information. All we had to do was just to reload our app, our emulator, sorry. So we have the email and the first name. As you can see, the first name here says Tom Brown. Okay, so now we need to now implement this because we want a user that is opening the app the first time to see the onboarding screen. And after the first time that they're opening the app, they should never ever see the onboarding screen again. They should not see the onboarding screen again, but rather we'll have to check if they are signed in, they will be logged into their dashboard, which is their home. But if they are not, they should be navigated to the login screen. So this is very, very important because this is actually how some of this app works by default. So how are we going to do this? So we need to first of all call as a use effect. So we need to have a use effect. So this use effect will have cons, let's call it check first time open. Okay, so it's going to be an async, and so it's going to be an async, and we now check for the user. Okay, so if first time, we're going to create this. So if first time is equal to null. Okay, so if first time is equal to null, then let me just comment here and say first time the app is opened after installation. Okay, so let's create this hook down here. So let's call this cons. Sorry. So let's call it first time dot set first time, which is use state, and initially is set to null. So the user is opening the app for the first time, so it's null, so which means it's true. First time will not have anything inside. All right, so let's continue down here. Now we need to get the await.async. We need to create another local storage to check if the user has signed or if the user is opening the app for the first time. So we have the async storage, which you also need to import here, as you can see. So now async.set item, we are setting the item right now, and then let's call this is first time, or let's just call it first time as we have been using here. First time has to be inside first time. So if this first time is true, let's set this first time to false. All right, and set first time here, set it to false. Okay, else we have our set first time Okay, sorry, we're setting here true, and then she sets here true, and then sets here false. Okay, and now we need to call this function. We need to call it inside of our use effect to enable it to run. All right. Okay, so this is the first part. Now we need to create another use effect also to know where to log user in. So if this is the first time that they are logging in, we are setting this to false. So if it is their first time, that means they have opened the app, which means it is null. Now we need to change that back to false. I don't know whether you're getting me. If the user is opening the app for the first time, this null has to be changed. It's not going to be null, but something else, and we are saving that information inside our first time. So our first time is actually now false. Before it was true because it is the first time, but now we are setting it now to false because the user has opened the app for the first time and has seen the onboarding screen. So right now, set first time is no longer first time, but it's no longer null, but rather true. I don't know whether you're getting me. Okay, so now let's continue back. Let's continue down here. So we need to use our another use effect to know what will happen in case a user. Let me write this properly. Okay, so another use effect we check. Let me just comment this and say after checking for the first time, proceed with the login checks. Okay, so let me just call this false. Okay, so after checking for the first time, and like after doing the first check with the first use effect, we need to check and proceed with the login. How do we want to check? So if the user is signed up, if the user is signed up or has logged in the first time, that means they don't have to log in again. They should be taken directly to their dashboard. Else, if they are not logged in but they are not opening the app for the second time, they should be taken to their login screen instead of showing them the whole onboarding screen to the registration screen, right? Okay, so let's check for it. First time. So if first time now is equal to false, remember we changed it to false after this first check, which is set here. So you can see here it's now false. So if it is false, and we need to check for our loading also, because loading, which will be importing from our global storage. Okay, so loading is true. So let's import this first of all. Let's import this. So import use GlobalStore. Okay, so in this GlobalStore we're going to be making use of some of these const, then use GlobalStore, and then we'll be making use of the loading, and I think we'll also be making use of the user data, okay. Okay, no, we should be making use of the is logged. Okay, is logged and user data, not actually user itself. Okay, so we have the loading, the user, and then the is logged, which we are getting from use GlobalStore. All right, so right here we need to navigate them to log in to home screen. So if a user is logging, router.replace. So after the check and we have a signed in user, they should just be navigated to the home screen. Else, router.replace, they should be navigated to the login screen. Okay, so this use effect has a dependency, and the dependency is based on the first time, because we always have to check before we run. Is logged in and user data. So these are the two dependencies that this second use effect will be making use of to check. So if the user is logged in, sorry, I think okay, there is a mistake. If the user is logged in, we need to check if they have data first. You understand? So I think let's just check for that here. There is a mistake. So let me just check if a user is opening the app for the first time, and it's not, if the user is no longer opening the app for the first time, which means this is now false. So we need to check if they are logged in. Sorry, that was a mistake there. Okay, so you need to check if it's logged in is true, and also if user data is available or is true. Remember, by default user data is null. Remember, so this else should now be moved above here. So that is where the else should belong to, and not the first if. Okay, so if we now have, in fact, let me just type this out and then explain later. So let me now do the router.replace. Okay, so now let me now explain. Remember, if user is opening the app the first time, we are now set this first time to false, and then they open it the second time after they must have signed up, registered themselves and everything. So now we now have first time and as false. So if we are checking the user for the second time, and now the first time is false, so which means they are no longer opening this app for the first time, rather they're opening the app for the second time. So now we now have to check if after that second time that they opened the app, did they register, did they sign up, did they sign in? So if they did that, then we no longer have to ask them to sign in again. We now have to just take them directly to their home page, which we have right now, or else we just navigate them down back to the login screen where they have to log in. So which means maybe for whatever reason the user signed up but couldn't log in, and then they open the app again for the second time, they won't be taken back to all the processes again. They just have to sign up again. And if their email is not verified, they will get the the error that their email is not verified. They should verify that, because they can't log in without a verified email. So I hope that you understand this. So because after that, we now need to check the last one. We now need to have another check, but no longer inside any form of use effect. So if first time, now we need to know what to display at the beginning. So if first time is null, or it's loading. So this, let me just show this. Show the loader while waiting for the first time checks, or global, just call it global loading. Okay, so remember, while all these decisions are being made by our app, remember, while all these use effects, they are all carrying out their appropriate algorithm to check for all these stuffs, we need to be showing the user some kind of loader. We don't have to just keep them. We need to show them some kind of loading animation, which we have created. Remember, we have our loader, which we created some time ago. All right, so we need to import this from our loader. Remember, the one we created inside our components, which is this. So we need to use that and then show the user a loading animation while all this decision is being made, especially if they don't have a fast internet, or for some reason the internet is very slow and you don't have to show them an empty screen. You just have to show them that, okay, something is happening, so you just have to wait a little bit for it to finish up. And then after that, we should now have this. We should now be able to show them the main code, which is this onboarding screen. So we have to decide when to show this onboarding screen right now, because we now have our logic right above it. So right now, if we save our app, we don't really know what to do with this onboarding screen yet. So we have to render it conditionally based on our first time. So how are we going to do that? Let's copy everything inside here. Let me just copy everything inside the onboarding screen down to here. Let me just cut it, and then above it, let's run another if check. So if first time is true, so if the user is opening the app for the first time, that is only when we have to return this onboarding screen. So we paste it down here. Remember, so if it is the first time that they are opening the app, which means it is true, remember, so they have to now see this onboarding screen. So if not, we just have to return, let's just return null, so which means they will be seeing onboarding, they will be seeing the loading screen. So loading animation. So if it is set to null, which we have by default, they will be having to check for all these. The loading animation will be checking for all these methods, all these functions that we have written, while they wait to get the corresponding and appropriate information from the user's async storage. All right, so I think this should work. It's time for us to test it. So let's just let's save everything. But I think before, okay, we don't have any error, but I also think we need to restart the app. For let me just try, and I know this will not work unless we reload our emulator. So let me just go back from here, for instance, and then open the app again. Let me open the app. Okay, we are seeing the onboarding screen. So let me try and see if it's gonna work without us having to reload our emulator. Okay, so let me sign in again, I guess. Let me sign in again. Okay, 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, and then all right. So now let me close the app again. Let me close it and open it once more. Okay, so which means we need to reload the app. It's not working, so let's just reload our emulator. Let's reload our emulator. Sometimes you have to clear the cache of this Expo app to have this working. Sometimes okay, as you can see, we have our loading animation here. So it's trying to check. Okay, so I think this is the first time that we are opening the app, and that's why we have this. So let's try it again. Then login screen. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Okay, now let's save. Okay, now we are logged in. Now let me close the app again, then try to open it again. We should be visited with a loading animation, but for some reason it's taking us back to the login, to the onboarding screen, which is not proper. So we need to terminate this by shutting down our emulator. And then while we do that, we need to also clear the cache of this Expo. So you can do that if you're using the phone. So let me just go back here. While we do that, let me run this npm start Expo here. Okay, so while we are doing that, let me clear the cache, because sometimes if you do something that has to do with async storage that stores something locally, you need to always wipe and start the app afresh. So most times, whenever we make some major changes on our app, we'll have to clear the cache so that we can start everything afresh and see if our code or our app is working properly, to avoid us running into any form of bug that we don't know. Maybe it's coming from our code or just from the app itself not being properly cleared. All right, so I've done that right now. So I have to head back and then wait for the Metro bundler to build. Okay, so let me head back. Okay, let me copy this hotel. Okay, the emulator has frozen for whatever reason. Okay, so now let me run the Expo once more. And then copy this. We wait for it. Let me not bore you guys. I think I just have to fast forward this while we wait for it. Okay, so let's try and run the app again. So this is like trying to run the app for the first time so that we can see if everything is working. All right, while this load, let me just fast forward it so that you guys can see. All right, so we are being visited with our onboarding screen, as you can see. So now let's try and navigate through this once more and sign user up. Okay, sign user in, sorry, not sign up. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, and then we log in. I hope we don't have any error here. Okay, we're not having the first name. It's taking a little bit time to come, which is actually good. I think this is working because of the fact that we have this chain here. If not, we would have been having an error here. So for whatever reason, we are not getting the user data accordingly or correctly, and we don't, because we're supposed to get it here. As long as you have a logged in, okay, it has appeared. So maybe my network was slow. Okay, it has appeared. So for some reason my network was slow. So I guess in the future maybe we'll have to put some kind of loading animation or something to show that we haven't completed the loading or the collection of the user's information. So right now, let's check. Let's head back. Let's close the app again. So let's just close the app for now and then try and open it again. Okay, so our code is not working as it should. We shouldn't be getting this screen again. Rather, we should be getting a loading animation which checks if the user is signed in or not. But for some reason, it's not working like that. So I guess I have to know where the issue is coming from. The issue, it shouldn't be like this. So let me close it again. Or maybe because I have, okay, I think it's showing, but I just clicked back. Hold on. No. So I think there's an issue somewhere. Okay, so I think I know where the issue is coming from. We missed a line of code. Remember, we are having this async storage as set item, but we need to get something first before we start setting. So we did not write the code for setting the item, for getting the item first of all. All right, so we need to have const and then call this is first time, which is equal to the await async storage dot get item, and the item that we are getting should be its first time, or yeah, item we are getting should be first time, not its first time. First time, or let me just make it its first time, the one we have here. Okay, remember, so now we need to pass this is first time down here. So we have first time, which is our hook we are using to check first of all. So now after setting this, getting the first time, we need to now change it. Okay, so as you can see, this is the code that I think we were missing, and that was why we were not having the app working appropriately. Apart from that, I think every other thing is working as it should. You can take a look, you can go through yours and check if you are having everything like this. If you are not, make the appropriate changes. All right, so now let's save, and then I think if I go back now, then open the app again. Okay, as you can see, we're no longer getting the onboarding screen, rather we are logging the user to their home screen directly. You can always try this, one more time to check. All right, we're not even getting any loading animation because maybe my internet is fast, so you just moving in. All right, so go through the code, check yours, because I think from here on we now have to start designing our home screen right now. Okay.